Om Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Guruvayurappa Sharanam. This video, Dasaka 87 of Narayaneeyam is KUCHELACHARITHam. Srimad Bhagavatam, Dasamam, chapters 80 and 81 are condensed here. To summarize the contents, Krishna had a fellow student at sage Sandipani's hermitage. Now a realized Brahmin, though a householder, maintaining his family with great difficulty by begging for alms. He was content with what he got, and that was sometimes precious little. His wife was also of similar disposition. Sudama was his real name and was known as Kuchela, means poorly dressed, because of his poverty. And the wife was called Chukchama. She had heard her husband mention about his great friend of student days, Lord Krishna of Dwaraka. Unable to bear the pangs of hunger and the sufferings of her half-starved children, one day she gently reminded her husband, "Dear Lord, you have told me sometimes about your friend, Lord Krishna, who is presently at Dwaraka. He is known to be a great giver of gifts. If you go and meet him, he will surely help us. Our children starve for want of food." The Brahmin relented and agreed to go. "But my dear," he said, "I must not go empty-handed when I go to see a great person." Whereupon the poor woman went out and got some paddy. She fried and pounded them into flattened rice and packed it neatly in a piece of cloth and gave it to her husband. He took it and, with great respect, with a walking stick and a pair of worn-out chappals, started on his journey. On the way, he had only one thought. At last, I can see my beloved face again. Oh, Krishna, Krishna. The poor Brahmin, with this thought throughout, did not feel the heat or cold or even any weariness. It was a long way. Oh, Krishna, Krishna, how blessed I will be. At last, the distant spires of Dwaraka came into view, and he was at the golden gate. An unerring instinct led him on, and he found himself entering the gates of one of the great mansions. Lord Krishna was resting there while Rukmani Devi was gently fanning him. Krishna's glance fell on the poor Brahmin wearing soiled clothes entering the gates. He immediately recognized his old friend, and wiping a tear from his eyes, Krishna ran down the steps, crying, "Oh, Sudama, my friend, why did you take so long a time to come?" and clasped him to his bosom and slowly led him in. All this time, Rukmani Devi was closely following in stunned surprise. Krishna seated his friend on the couch on which he was resting. Rukmani was now fanning Kuchela. Krishna washed his feet with cold Ganges water. Krishna gently said, "Sudama, I am a big family man now. This is my queen, Rukmani. Kindly bless her and me." And with that, they both knelt down before him. Krishna continued, "And of course, you two have entered the Grihasthashram, isn't it? And how is my sister and your children? Are all well?" Sudama could scarcely speak with emotion. "They all are well, Lord, by your grace." And with that, they began to talk of olden days. "Oh, Sudama, do you remember how one day the three of us, V2 and Balrama, went to the forest to fetch firewood as required by our Guru Patni and were overtaken by a great storm preventing return, and how we spent the night on the tree top, shivering with cold? Before daybreak, our Guru came with burning torches and loudly calling our names and took us back to the ashram. He was so touched that he blessed us, saying, 'Dear people, I am immensely pleased with your selfless service. May you never forget the lessons I have taught. May you be able to recall them when required. Only by a teacher's blessing a pupil becomes perfect. Like this, they talked on far into the night, holding each other by the arm, when Krishna suddenly asked, Sudama, have you not brought anything for me? Sudama looked abashed. Noticing this, Krishna suddenly snatched the packet from under his arm and opening it exclaimed, Excellent! I like nothing better. And grabbing a little, put it into his mouth and ate it with relish. Ah, how sweet it is! And he ate another handful. When he took another handful for a third time, Rukmini Devi, who was Sri Lakshmi herself, caught hold of his hand, whispering, Enough, enough. With 2 handfuls, I have already made him rich beyond dreams. Krishna stopped, and Sudama did not understand what all this whispering was going on. Leaving him comfortably in a velvet bed, Krishna retired. Sudama could not sleep for long, thinking over the events of the day. A poor Brahmin like me, an ill-clad beggar, I have been embraced by the Lord of all wealth, as if I was his own brother. Ah, the magnanimity of the great! Full of thankfulness, Sudama felt that he was in heaven and slowly fell asleep. Early morning, he woke up with the birds. Krishna was ready in attendance. Sudama again became Kuchela. He put on his old clothes, old chappals, and took up his sturdy staff and stepped out. Krishna escorted him and affectionately said, Sudama, do not forget me. Come again. He did not give any gift, and neither did Kuchela ask for. Alas, he thought, I did not ask for anything. I know why he did not give me any gift. Wealth would spoil my tapas. How kind is the Lord. Thinking like this, a little sad nevertheless, he slowly wended his way back homeward. The familiar old landmarks were missing. Have I missed my way? Wondered Kuchela. But no, it cannot be. In the place of his old house there stood a great mansion with avenue of trees, parks and fountains. Well-dressed servants were passing in and out. As the poor man stood utterly bewildered, the great door opened and a beautiful lady came towards him. It was his wife, now glowing like a goddess. With tears of joy in her eyes, she knelt before him and explained the mystery. As she was describing all this wonder, the children came trooping in dressed like princes and bright like flowers in the garden. The Sudama, the Brahmin, though surrounded by luxury now, lived like a recluse with great restraint, remembering that all his prosperity was due to Krishna's kindness, his grace, and attained the supreme grace from which there is no return. Hare Guru Ayyappa. Now we will see the slokas of Kuchelanaama bhavada sadityatam gadassa sandipani mandire dvijah Todegaraghena dhanadini spruho dinani ninye prashami grihashami. The Brahmin by the name Kuchela was thy fellow disciple in the hermitage of sage Sandipini. He was totally devoted to thee, a householder with a controlled mind and senses. He spent his days calmly without any worldly desires of wealth. Samanashila tadiya vallabha tadaiva no chitta jayam sameyushi kadajiduje padavritti labdhaye ramabadikyam nasaga nishevyade. His wife, who equaled him in nature, had not achieved the same level of desirelessness as him. Once she asked him why should he not approach his friend Krishna, the consort of Lakshmi, for getting some means of livelihood. Iti ridoyam priyaya kshutartaya jugupsumano vidane madavahe tada tudalo kanakaudugadyayau vahan padante pradhuganupayanam. Kuchela set off for thy place more out of eagerness to meet thee than for acquiring a means of livelihood, as prodded by his wife, troubled by hunger. He had a repulsiveness towards wealth, because of its proneness to generate pride and arrogance. He carried in a corner of his cloth some beaten rice as an offering to thee. गदोऽयमाश्चर्यमयीं भवत्पुरीं गृहेषु शैभ्याभवनं समेयुवान् प्रविश्य वैकुण्ठमिवाभनिर्वृतिं तवादिसम्भावनया तु किं पुनः. Kuchela reached the wonderful city, and among the many houses entered the house of Mitravrinda. As he did so, he attained supreme peace, as though he had entered Vaikuntha only, more so by their lavishing hospitality beyond description. प्रभूजितं तं प्रियया च वीजितं करे गृहीत्वा कथय पुराकृतं सदिन्दनार्थं गुरुदारचोदितैः अबत्तु वर्षं तदमर्षिकानने. After a cordial reception by thee, as he was fanned by the consort, thou held his hands and recalled the old incidents, like when at the behest of the teacher's wife, thou went together to gather firewood and were caught in an unseasonal rain in the forest. त्रबाजुषोऽस्माल् पृथुकं बलादथ प्रगृह्य मुष्टौ सकृदाशिते त्वया कृतं कृतं नन्यतेदि सम्भ्रमल् रमा किलोपेत्यकरं रुरोधते. Kuchela was feeling very shy, and so, though forcibly snatched the flattened rice from him and ate a fistful. Just then, in great consternation, Lakshmi approached thee and held back thy hand, saying that much was indeed enough. Bhakteshu bhaktena samanidastvaya purim vasanneka mahasukham bataparedyur dravinam vinayayau vijitra rubastvava khallu anugraha. He was greatly honored by thee, the devoted of the devotees, and very happily stayed in the city for one night. The next day he went away, alas, without any wealth. Strange indeed are thy form of blessing. Yadi ह्यया शिष्यमदास्यदच्युतो वदामि भार्यां किमिति व्रजन्नसौ त्वदुक्तिलीलास्मिदमघ्नति पुनः क्रमादपश्यन्मणिधि प्रमालयम्. Had I but asked for wealth, Krishna would surely have given. What shall I tell my wife? Thus telling himself, he walked along, immersed in the memories of thy talks and thy playful smile. By and by, he reached a gem-studded, splendorous mansion. Kimmargavibhram idi brahmanshanam griham pravishtas sadadarsh vallabham sakhi paridam manihema bhushidam buboda chatval karunam mahadbudam. What, have I lost my way? Thus wondering for a moment, he entered the house. He saw his wife adorned in ornaments of gems and gold and surrounded by ladies in waiting. He then realized thy grace and compassion and the most wonderful results of the same. Saratnashala suvasannapi swayam samunnamal bhakti baro mridam yayo tvameva ma purida bhakta vanchido marutpuradhisha haraswamegadan. Residing in the bee-gemmed mansion, he himself was full of devotion for thee, which incessantly grew of its own. In the end, he attained liberation, though in such a manner fulfilled the desire of thy devotees. O Hare Guruvayurappa, be pleased to rid me of my ailments. With this, we have completed the saga 87 Kuchelacharitham. Here we will listen to Sati Suresh's bhajan song now.
गोपाला राधलोला मुरलीलोला नंदलाला गोपाला राधलोला मुरलीलोला नंदलाला केशव माधव जनार्दना केशव माधव जनार्दना वनमाला वृंदावन बाला मुरलीलोला नंदलाला गोपाला राधलोला मुरलीलोला नंदलाला आनंद मोहन निरंजना वनमाला वृंदावन बाला मुरलीलोला नंदलाला मुरलीलोला नंदलाला मुरलीलोला नंदलाला